Survivor's ready.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now would be the time to do so.
The queen stays queen.
You said rustle feathers.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
We have ripe bananas all the time.
Dude, my prize isn't even $1 million. My prize was that I fell in love in this game. Love at first sight. Her name is Candace.
You officially go down as the dumbest survivor ever.
Welcome to Not Game, All Personnel. Hey, we are a Survivor podcast here to talk about all things Survivor, more specifically the events of this past week. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. How are we doing, Tony? How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great. I gotta say,
Applebees last night. So I mean, man, I could not be happier. That Wednesday night Applebees, man, it just hits.
Obviously you were the first thing that came to mind when the whole everything, because you and I went to Applebee's recently against your will. It was not your call, and you made it very clear that you are sick of Applebee's when we went the entire time. You do go every Wednesday, true?
Yeah, we go every week after a youth group that I serve at. We always go to Applebee's because it's just like the only thing everybody agrees on. But boy, am I over Applebee's! And then this entire episode was built around Applebee's.
Yes.
Great marketing for them.
Do you feel like you relate more to Liz's situation now that you know you share this weekly tradition with her?
No, because we have such opposite opinions on this weekly tradition.
So here, okay, I want to get a better gauge on your disdain towards Applebee's. If you were on this season, would you have said no to the reward? Or
no,
okay, so Applebee's like on a desert island, you would still you need
like,
it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it so much, and like every time I go, I feel like I get things that it's like, okay, this like sounds the best out of the options I have, because it's like half off app, so there's not a ton of options for that for like the cheap prices. So I'll just like get something, and it'll be like, man, after the first like 2 wings, it's like, okay, this isn't like good anymore. Like it hit the spot when I was really hungry, and then it just kind of fades. So it's not necessarily bad food. It's just when you have it so much, it gets super old.
Yeah, that's a valid take. And I think I'm coming along to that take, because when you and I went, so when you came in town, I was like, we're going to Applebee's. I haven't been in forever. And which is true. Maybe like 6 months ago, maybe even longer. I used to go all the time, right? Because yes, half off apps, that's what you do. Not anymore. And I think when we got done eating, I think I made the comment. I was like, yeah, that didn't really hit the way I remembered it.
Yeah, you're like, that wasn't very good. I was like, exactly. It's not.
Like those boneless wings just don't sit well.
And like the food that they had wasn't, I mean, they had some apps it sounded like, but they're also having like chicken and shrimp and stuff. So like some of the nicer stuff that they have, some of the more expensive stuff. So I'm sure it was great. Like I would have pounded most of the stuff that they were offered.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we don't have the same praise that Liz has, so this would be a horrible promotion for Applebee's. Good thing we are not sponsored like Survivor is.
I wonder if her love of Applebee's and her conduct in this episode was a positive or a negative for Applebee's as a whole. That's my question.
I think for Applebee's it's a positive. I don't
like it. Probably would be.
Is the negative like we have this crazy person that likes our food?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, to me, it's like look at how people will react if they don't get to eat at our restaurant. I don't like
that's not a negative. Yeah.
Like these are the things that they pay actors to do in food commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And she just willingly served it up for them. If Applebee's does not like give her some sort of, I don't know, partnership,
they have to.
There's no way she hasn't been contacted in the past 24 hours. Be like, hey, can you be our spokesperson? Can you just post a picture of yourself eating at Applebee's? We'll give you, free burgers for a year. I mean, come on, Applebee's. If you're not doing that, you're missing out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just easy marketing, and it's not super expensive to just give her free burgers for a year. Like that's not bad at all.
No. Well,
do you feel like there's we're gonna sit on this for a while because there's a lot in this that just is wild. I
Uh-huh.
feel like the episode felt like it was trying to paint her in a sympathetic light after that explosion. Leaving the episode, how do you view Liz? Are you kind of sympathetic towards her? Are you kind of just like whatever? What are you thinking?
No, I'm definitely not sympathetic. But
Okay.
I don't know if I thought the episode was doing that, but it also could just be that I'm a cruel person. And even if the episode was trying, I didn't pick up on that because I walked out. I mean, I wouldn't say like I viewed her in a negative light. I think it came out neutral. I think if anything, the thing that kept on running through my mind is earlier on in this season, we were talking about how many crazy people there are on this season, and somehow
Yeah.
they just keep coming. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
thought at one point Jelensky was the odd one. Then we thought it's Jess. We're like, oh, Jess is a little out there. Then Banu. Like, I can't believe that there are two people that have topped Banu being Q and Liz at this point. It's insane.
When you put it that way, that's outrageous. That I didn't even consider like just the progression of this season and the insanity of some of these people. And maybe this is we're seeing like the new Survivor is more difficult and it's causing this. I think when I felt like he was trying to paint her in a sympathetic light, there was like the moment when she got back and she's trying to like start fire and she's like crying and just having like it's such an emotional like breakdown for her that I feel like that I feel maybe it wasn't intended to point that way, but I feel like you could leave this episode feeling super sympathetic for her. Me personally, I'm in the same camp as you. It's like you knew that you had these allergies or whatever they are going into this. You knew it was going to be more difficult, and so to me, I'm not going to accept you trying to use that as like a reason for people to feel sympathy for you in the game. Like you made this decision
Mm-hmm.
actively. It
Yeah.
wasn't something. So like yeah, all of that. I did enjoy her blowing up on Q, but like he doesn't have to take you in. Honestly, you're not a mover and shaker like you think you are. So why would he take you? It obviously didn't
Yeah.
affect his game all that much. He's still there.
No, 100%. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw this, but in what am I saying? Tiffany's exit interview. Spoiler alert:
Nice.
Tiffany went home. Uh, she mentioned that during that whole exchange, that they actually cut out that both her and Kenzie volunteered, like, "Hey, Liz, you can take our spot." And Q just doubled down and said, "Nope, this is my decision. I picked you. You're not swapping for her." So that definitely adds a little bit to like, oh, she got done dirty.
I wish they had shown that because that also just shows how much he's like, you're not gonna help my game. This is not going to help my game taking you to this. Like it's just not. And I think that's honestly good game sense from him. She wasn't gonna help. Nobody listens to Liz really.
And here's the
They go to
thing.
Liz to like back them up essentially.
Well, here's the thing, is he ended up actually needing her vote. And
Yeah.
he did get it.
Yeah.
Not because of like him, like, it was obviously Maria and other people that were, convincing Liz, but I don't know. I think like that's the only like there could be a strategic reason being like, okay, Liz, I know we have our beef right now, but I'm gonna take you on this reward because I might need to work with you. He didn't do that. He still doubled down, said, nope, you're not gonna eat food, and she still ended up keeping him. That's a power
that's the right
move.
decision for her. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. It is a power move, but that's just genuinely, I feel like the right decision for her. Like you're not gonna throw away your game just because you're mad that somebody didn't give you. I hopefully people have done it. So to say that you're not going to is actually a bit crazy for me. Um, it is wild though, and I think it's like if he had approached her asking for a vote, no chance in the world he gets it. It was the fact that Marie is the one that went and talked to her and was just like, "This is how the game's going." I've never heard anybody scream like that at somebody. Genuinely, I don't think I've ever heard anybody just lose it. Where
Yeah.
everybody else is just standing there uncomfortable. Like I've seen
Yeah.
people lose it and scream at each other back and forth, but it was just her going for like a minute straight. It blew my mind what this woman was doing.
Yeah, my favorite part was there was one moment where Venus kind of like began to gesture over, like gonna put her hand on her, and then Liz like gave an extra scream, and then she's like backed off. It's so subtle, but I've seen some people post the clip. It's the funniest thing ever because Venus is like, "Oh, I'm gonna go comfort her." Like, "Oh, never mind," and that's how literally everyone
Just
felt.
kidding.
Everyone's like, "Nope, we are not gonna say anything. Nothing will help. We're just gonna let her do this, and hopefully it, passes
And
on."
even afterwards, I would just be like, I'm not going to deal with that. Like, I'm just not interested in dealing with any of that, whatever just happened.
Yeah, it's truly bizarre. All I gotta say from this whole situation, from mostly, I think once I found out that there were things not included in the edit, like Tiffany and Kenzie volunteering themselves, I am. I said this last week. I believe it more now than ever. I think Q's gonna win this game. I
Yeah.
really think that. Why else would you not include that other than we want to protect some image of him? Because we can't
I don't-
totally make him the full villain that maybe he actually was in this situation.
I don't know. I can see him getting there. And then getting there, I feel like I could see him getting votes. Oh
Like
my
I said
gosh.
last week, right now, the only person in the jury that I don't think would 100% vote for him is Tiffany. The other three, he hasn't wronged, and in fact, he was working with, and they didn't go home because of him. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
He's got
Interesting.
more of a shot
No.
than I think people are realizing.
Would he be the most chaotic winner ever? He'd have
Oh,
to be, right?
it depends. I mean, like, you could make the argument, like, Tony had a bunch of antics.
Mhm.
Like he had very, I don't know, big moments, I guess.
Mhm.
But I think the hard part is, from the outside point of view, we know that this isn't all strategy by Q. I think we're
Mhm.
aware of this now. It's a
Mhm.
lot of him just acting emotionally in the moment and kind of, not really keeping it all together when he's like, I want to quit, vote me out. Like, we've seen now, that's not strategy. Now, what he's doing with it, I think,
Yep.
is becoming successful. So again, if he can somehow talk his way or talk the jury into believing that this was good for him, I think that's his shot. But I think if he gets to the end and they don't believe that he got there because of his own intentions, then I think that's where he couldn't win.
Yeah, his damage control almost is really and like positioning after he like has an outburst is actually kind of impressive to just like, okay, I'll just adjust this way. Okay, now I'm just going to shut up and let him come to me, and then people come up and say, "Hey Q, we kind of want to vote out Tiffany's." Like, I'd write Tiffany's name down now. Like, yes, let's do it. Like, he just knew that it was like, all right, now I'm just going to back off, let him come. Like, yeah, those reactions are impressive. I don't like it. It's one of those things where I don't like it, but you're right, and it's not. It's a good skill to have in this sort of a game. Like, you have to be able to rebound, and that's what he's been doing constantly. It feels like.
Yes. No. And I also think, like, just personally speaking, I do think that would be one of my preferred winners out of this season. Because, like, when I look at the list of who's left, like, what's gonna top this season off as like being a really good season. Like, Ben, I don't think is gonna win, right? Like, I just don't think he's got the arc, the story. Venus, definitely not. Again, I still think she's gonna make
fallen
it to
the
the end.
background too much. Yeah.
Right, but I still think she's making it to the end. Probably not gonna win. Liz, no, not a chance. I still think Kenzie's got a shot. Obviously, Charlie and Maria are running the show, but honestly, like, I feel like them winning isn't the best representation of this season, only because they're playing such a more calm, level-headed game, I suppose. And I almost would want more of a bold, like, out there winner, like Q, or even Kenzie, because I think Kenzie's story of like being a part of Yanu, and I don't know if that makes sense, but I think
Yeah.
like having Q the representative of this season, I think would just make the most sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. He definitely fits the bill of what this season is more than anybody else. So like, I see what you're saying there, and having like really only the two like very level-headed people on the season. Not that's an over exaggeration probably. But
Sure.
the two people who are like calculated and know what they're doing be the two that wins is like, oh, they were with a bunch of crazy people. Like, of course they're going to be the ones that make it up, but they're with a bunch of crazy people, so it is still impressive. Yeah, I definitely see he fits that bill as the most fair representation of what the season looks like, but the winners aren't always a fair representation of what the season looked like.
No, you're right. And I think, like, honestly, I don't know how many people would argue that Charlie and Maria aren't playing the best game right now. Like, I feel like that's just because we've seen now, I think, like 3 or 4 weeks in a row where literally they are the deciding factor. Like, they are the ones controlling the game. So I don't know. I think, like, if I had to bet money on it, I would say one of them. But I think in my head, Q is a lot of fun.
If in kind of shifting gears a little bit, if those two aren't the biggest targets now, then the rest of the people in the game are just dumb and they don't have a chance. Because, like, first of all, Charlie's won 2 immunities in a row. That immediately is a red flag that, like, oh, we're concerned Q is the issue, but Charlie's been dominating these. And obviously we get to see the background that he's been training with grip strength and stuff, and that's like impressive and obviously showed in that challenge.
Yeah.
But then Maria was the one that spearheaded and dictated this move. And at least for Kenzie, this was supposed to be Kenzie's move. Like, this is the move that she wanted, was to take out the person who was the closest to her. And for some reason she backed off and Maria was like, no, we're doing it with or without you, and did it. So now she's made a big move and he's won immunities. And so if they're not the biggest threat, I don't understand what game they're playing.
I agree. I think, again, the question that I brought up last week, and I'm still not I'm not sure on, is what is the awareness of their duo to other people? Because we haven't yet seen that be discussed, like, or acknowledged, you know? And I think for us, like, they almost don't exist outside of each other. Like, what is Maria's game outside of Charlie? What is Charlie's game? Like, they have, like, small little conversations here and there, but, like, they've been so lock and step this entire game. But I'm just not sure if the people there realize that yet. And so I think that's going to be, I think, the bigger issue here. And I think something, I don't know if this was intentional on their part. I would assume it was at least realized while doing these moves. But I think, like, by getting Tiffany out especially, they've successfully pretty much isolated every single person there. Like, Ben, I think, is more loyal to them than maybe Kenzie. Like, Ben and Kenzie, we know, like, you know, are close, but Kenzie lost Tiffany. Kenzie and Q are not close. Liz and Venus, nope. Like, I think, like, you look at all the people left, I was like, are those people going to be enough to rally against them? And that's what I'm not sure of.
Yeah, especially because we don't know how, like, we've never heard anybody talk about them as a duo. It's kind of similar to last season with that group of 4 where we so clearly knew that they were working together, but nobody else knew. And I feel like I wish they would tell us that. I wish they would, like, show us in some way that nobody knows that they're a duo if they don't. But I guess what I'm saying is I feel like both of them have become just threats in their own right. Like, because everybody was pulled into this vote, and if you're pulled into a vote, it's not your move. It's whoever pulled you in. Even if you were thinking about it, like, that's just kind of the way it's going to be received always. And so you should know Maria was the one that was, like, really spearheading this. But the people that would know that are, like, Ben, Q, and Liz. So would they really do anything about it? But yeah, Charlie winning 2 immunities, that should be a red flag for everyone, unless they're just so confident that he's not a strong enough player in other areas, in which case they're playing an incredible game if there's still no threat from them.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to tell because I think the only time we heard Maria's name get mentioned was from Tiffany. And so now that that's gone, will that die down a little? Venus kind of talked about Charlie a couple times, but that was when they split off into 2 teams within a merged tribe. My mistake, Jeff Probst.
Yeah, please get it right.
And that was more because there weren't a lot of options. And she's like, hey, let's get rid of a strong guy if there's so few of us here. So, like, I think that's if their name is brought up next week, it's going to kind of come up out of nowhere. only because people haven't been talking about them. So I agree with you. Like, they are the biggest threats, and people should realize that. Especially, I would say, like, to me, Kenzie feels like the person that should realize this the quickest, especially since this move last night was offered to her by Maria,
Mm-hmm.
and she kind of like, no, I don't think. And then they did it without her, and so like, you gotta imagine Kenzie's just beating herself up because this whole
Oh, absolutely.
big move, like this was her resume. She's like, I'm gonna get out my number one ally, and she winds up being one of the few people that aren't actually a part of that move now.
But she's the ooh. But now she has to be the one to rally the troops if it's going to happen, right?
She should be
She's
because
going to be annoyed. She's going to be annoyed that she didn't get to be a part of it. That
yes,
she didn't get to drive that move. She knows that Maria did it. She knows that that group did it, but she knows for sure that she has to know that Maria decided that. She has to connect the dots that like Maria decided that she's running the show. We need to get rid of her. It's just, can she convince Q and Liz and she'd need 4, right? So Q, Liz, and Ben. Is that who we'd have?
I mean, she could get Venus in there. I feel like
Venus.
people...
Yep, probably Venus over Ben. So Liz, Venus, and Q, and then they can take a shot at that trio of Sega because they're, even though Ben's on the outside, that 3, if that 3 makes it another tribal, then they just have enough people to match everybody, and so they're golden from there.
Right, and I think for Charlie and Maria, like, yeah, let's take Ben at the end. No harm there.
Mhm.
I think I want to hear more from Charlie and Maria. Is there a plan to cut one another at some point? Because that is what we have not heard from them, either of them. And I think that would be, I think, tell us a lot about them. You know, like, do they actually just want to get to the end and battle it out? Do they think they have different games that could be argued to the jury? Or, you know, does next week come around and Charlie's like, hey, Maria kind of, you know, was really spearheading this move here. I think maybe I should, like, that would be interesting. But I think we just haven't seen anything from them, so I'm not confident that that's going to happen in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, you feel like you have to see it. And I think I'm a little bit different than you because you mentioned earlier that you felt like they had pretty like lockstep games. I think you could differentiate their games a little bit if you tried because Charlie's kind of he's winning challenges. And I feel like you can be like, I'm winning challenges so that our options are always open. Like I feel that'd be like such an interesting argument when you're arguing with somebody else who also like you worked with, is like, I was keeping our options open and making sure our targets could go home. Whereas Maria, it feels like she's driving a lot of the strategy, but also she's the one who's like rallying the votes a lot of the time. She's the one that goes around and like, hey, we're doing this. What do you think? Do you want to join us? And that's such a key part of it that Charlie, I don't think would be bad at, but I think she's done more of from what I can remember.
Yeah.
So I think there is some distinction there, but yeah, like how do you credit moves and perception is reality and all of those things that factor into it as well.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I don't know. There's part of me that wants to see them at the end together just to hear like them out, because I do think both of them would be very good at Final Tribal. And I think that's always makes it better, you know? Like, there's nothing worse than someone getting to Final Tribal and being like, oh, man, like, we wasted this speech on them. Like, I can explain your game better than you can. Like, this is a bummer. But I think, like, they would both be very good at that. So I kind of hope that happens. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, I think those two would be really good. I think Kenzie Sneaky wouldn't be very good at Final Tribal. I think Q would be bad. Q and Venus would just, like, nobody would believe they say, I think.
I don't think Q would be bad.
I think
really don't.
He'd be so aggressive, like unintentionally aggressive. Like, that's just kind of his personality. That's how he interacts with people. And I think that would be off-putting. And if he's saying something that he seems delusional at times. So if he's saying something that they're just like, that's just not true, then yeah, it's gonna be tough going for him, is what I think.
I suppose so. But again, I'm just looking at the jury right now, and I don't see them not believing what he is saying. Because I don't even know what he would say. Because it's not like a Venus situation, I think, is different. Because what's going to happen to Venus if she's going to get the end, and she's going to try to claim moves that weren't hers? That's just gonna happen because that's been the theme of her.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's all her fault, but that's just kind of how it is, right? Like she believes she's in on these things. Turns out she was just the +1 to someone else's master plan.
Yeah.
Q, I don't know if Q necessarily has that same thing. Like Q's not going to be trying to take other people's moves because his game has been unlike anyone else's. I think he'll admit like, hey, Maria asked me to join this vote, and so I joined the vote. I strategically went off by myself and, kind of threw a pity party until someone approached me to be a number. Like I don't see him kind of taking over someone else's moves to the point that the jury wouldn't believe him, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe that's true. I don't know. People think he's so insane, and people don't trust what he says so much that I could see them just dismissing the things that he's saying. Like him coming into, somebody would be like, explain the tribal where you just wanted to get voted out. And then he's like, yeah, I wanted to get voted out. Like, I don't think that'll be a positive thing for him. And then the next tribal where he was also real combative and was going back and forth with someone, I think, like, that's not going to be good for him when it comes to final tribal.
But again, I think the key here is he could win a game that we've seen almost no winner do, and that is the game of I was so delusional and chaotic that it forced you all to keep me. And if he can sell that single point, every other mistake almost doesn't matter because that helps prove that single point.
Interesting. It's almost like the first one of the few times that we've ever seen somebody actually lower their threat level in any real way.
Yes.
Like I feel like it's an impossible thing to do, but he reached the point where he was one of the biggest threats in the game and then went insane. And now and I guess if he's able to package it that way, like I knew that I needed to do something to make myself less of a threat, so I became insane. Maybe they'd buy that. That's a bold strategy. I kind of like it, honestly.
I think that's his only strategy, though. I don't think he can spin zone this any other way, other than to just keep going down this route. I think if he completely becomes the victim number one, like the martyr of the, hey, I'm on an island by myself, not with these other people. Like we're all on an island, but then I'm on an island. You know what I mean? There's two islands here. There's an island within the island. Do you understand this analogy? Okay.
Yep.
I think that's the only way he can sell this.
It's really good.
To play the game of like, look it, ever since the merge, I've been kind of on my own here. Every single week I get votes. Every single week I'm the backup plan. Maybe he finds an idol. Maybe he wins immunity here or there. But like he gets to the end and says, I never had, from the merge on, I didn't have an alliance. Like that is something to, I don't know, reward, I guess. Like there's something there.
Yeah, there is something there. And like one thing that's fascinating is he's been do you want to be in a position where you're the easy target and everybody wants to make big moves instead? Because that's kind of where he's been. Like nobody wants him there, and they're not really keeping him because they think he's not a big threat, but it's because it's the easy choice, and when there's an easy choice, there's a big move to be made.
Especially in this new era where big moves are like the thing. Like I need something on my resume. Voting Q out won't add to my resume.
Yeah, it's just he's a silver platter for doing something else, for surprising someone else, because you always think that votes are going to go to Q.
Yeah,
so
100%.
So in my head, I see that, and it's like, wow, that's a fascinating way to stick around in the game. It really is. Is that something that you can manufacture, or is it just who he is that has created this possibility? Like, would a player next season be able to replicate this in any real way where they're a clear target and everybody should vote them out, but they continue not to?
I don't know. I almost feel like it has to be more natural, and I think that's kind of... I do think a lot of this is sincere with him. Like, I really do. And I think that makes more sense than him doing this as a strategy thing. Because I don't know. I just think people would be able to call that out. But I think because it's so sincere, that's why it's so believable. And that's why people are like, no, he's actually not a threat. And they're technically correct in that. You know? Like, they are technically correct. Like, he's not going to hurt us because no one's going to work with him. Although, I guess that's not entirely true. But, like, I don't know. Like, as of now, he's not a threat. because of his personality. I don't think you can manufacture that. Like I don't know. That'd be tough.
Yeah, I don't think it's replicable, but there is something to like. I don't know if he goes home next week either, because there's going to be someone else that you can blindside. There's somebody else that you can take a shot at. And I love this era of just like every vote is a blindside. It's happened for a few seasons now where it's just like constantly you're just getting people. And that's such a fun way to play. And the amount of people have gone home with idols in their pocket because of Q, like there's something, could he claim that in a way? Like
I don't know if he could.
No, not really. I don't know. Like I was such a big target that it made it easier to get rid of these people who had idols. No, I don't think that would be received well unless you could really frame it well. But there is something to that.
I mean, he could maybe talk it up. Like I think like last week the Hunter vote, which I would like to debrief just a tad at some point. But I think like that could be one where, you know, him and Tiffany going at it at Tribal Council was so exaggerated to the point that Hunter believed he didn't have to play his idol. So I think there is a world Q maybe could use that. Say like I was purposely over the top at Tribal Council so that people felt comfortable, like Hunter. But then that's tough because Q voted for Ben last week. So he wasn't a part of the Hunter vote, technically. I don't that one's a little tricky. Okay. Two things. I got a lot of things actually. I do want to note that this having 3 people voted out this season with idols in their pocket, we are officially tied for the record with Island of the Idols. That also had 3 people go home with idols in their pocket. Now, it depends on how you want to word this, okay? On Island of the Idols, there were technically 4 idols that went home because Kelly had 2 in her pocket when she got voted out. I don't even know if you remember who Kelly is. Let me name off these names, okay? Vince, Chelsea, and Kelly.
I thought of Kelly Wentworth in the moment.
Vince, Chelsea, and Kelly are the 3 people from Island of the Idols that went home with idols in their pocket, okay? Got it?
I totally remember them.
As you look it up right now.
You can't hear me typing. You don't know that.
Okay, so on that season, there were 4 idols that went, but with 3 people. So depending on how you want to word the record. There's also, again, I don't think it counts, but like, you can note that Randon went home this season with an idol in his pocket, just not voted out. Yeah. So if the record is idols that left the game when someone left the game unplayed, you know, then there's 4 people. But as far as votes out, that's 3. So
I'm convinced I've never seen those 3 people in my life from Island of the Idols. That's insane.
Unfortunately, you do remember Kelly. She was in the middle of the Dan situation. I'll just.
Yeah, I blanked most of that out of my head. I
okay,
remember.
Sorry for bringing it up.
Off the top of my head, I think I could name 3 people from the season. Unfortunately, one of them's Dan. And it sucks because that season, without all of that, there was some fun gameplay, and I feel like it was an interesting season, but that obviously tainted it. Anyways, we're going to move on from that because I don't want to talk about it. Do they re-hide idols in this era now?
It's hard to tell because no one seems to...
Can't remember anybody ever finding one late in the game.
That's a good question. Well, on the preview for next week, people are idol hunting. So I think... Well, okay, but here's the interesting thing, okay? And this kind of goes back to last week. They still weren't 100% sure that Hunter's idol was real. Some of them still think he's bluffing. So I think now that Tiffany, like, this is officially an idol, we know 100% she had an idol, and maybe that's why they're looking now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have to imagine they're always looking in general, and just... I think they've gone away from hiding it in the very, very obvious... like structures.
Sure.
Like, this massive tree with all these beautiful sprawling branches. Obviously, they're going to hide an idol there. I don't think they do that as much anymore.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah, so I'm assuming some will find out, but here's the other note I took, okay? Because I had this thought, and I was very correct in my thought, that this season we have had fewer advantages than any other modern era Survivor season. The only other advantages that we've had was we had 2 extra votes. One was with Tevin. He went home with it. And then Maria used it to get Jem out.
Yeah.
There hasn't been an extra vote since. And the only other, this isn't an advantage, but a twist, losing a vote, okay? The only people that have lost votes were Jelinski, didn't matter. Banu, didn't matter. And then Ben at the merge didn't have a vote, and that didn't matter. Or no, sorry, not the merge. Their first tribal, he didn't have a vote, and that's when Maria used her extra vote, so it didn't matter. So besides that, no one has lost votes. So we have had the most consecutive weeks now without any sort of advantage or twist in play in any modern era Survivor.
This is potentially one of the most like just straight up games of Survivor in like over a decade, probably. When you look at it that way. And it's crazy that I like advantages, and I think they add a fun wrinkle into the game, and they have affected the game just in the fact that they're voting out Tiffany because she has an idol. So there's still an effect there. But it goes to show when you have a good cast, they'll make it interesting no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I guess I should also mention there's the shot in the dark that Mariah used, but like people don't even bring that up anymore. Like, when was the last time you remember the shot in the dark being referenced on this season? I think that is what I really like about this season is that the advantages they're not hindering the gameplay like it feels like they've done in other seasons, where players are just counting on votes and they're counting on the social game. They're not really taking into advantage, like, what if this person has an extra vote? Oh, what if they have the, what was the one advantage where you got to call out an advantage to someone and then take it? The knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Yeah.
We saw for 2 or 3 seasons after that was played, people were accounting for that. They're like, well, what if they have the knowledge is power? We have to account for that. We can't do this. So I think I like this season so much is because we're just focused on the numbers rather than who has what advantage.
And I think it might just be because those things don't exist, we're not seeing those conversations. But yeah, it is cool to just be like, we're just rallying votes. We're just pulling people in. We're having conversations. And that's all that's driving these decisions.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's great. I do want to briefly touch on last week's vote because we did learn a little bit more from the beginning of this episode.
One more quick thing before we get into that.
Yeah.
I also think it's valuable that like everybody is willing to like make moves in this era too. Like there's a lot less loyalty and a lot more respect for like big moves. So that's also part of it too, is you don't have to deal with that stuff as much because people are willing to turn on people they trust because they know that they need to for whatever reason, you know? So I think that's a big part of it as well that makes it such a fun gameplay at this point.
Yeah, no, that is a very valid point. And I think they almost have to make big moves, right? Because that's how you like I need one big move. So if every player has to have one big move, that's at least a move every week, right? So that's good for us.
Which are you upset with that? Sorry, pushing off your other thought even more. Do you dislike that being like a prerequisite in this modern era?
That's a good question. I think I dislike if it turns to that is the expectation that you need to win the game is to have one big move. I don't like that, but I like that players feel like they have to make one.
Okay, I like that.
I don't know if that makes sense. I think similar to the fire making. Like I like that, volunteering yourself for fire is an option and could be, but I don't like when you didn't volunteer yourself for fire. We can't give you the game. I don't like when it turns into that, which I think we have moved away from that. But I do like that there is this kind of sense that like we do need to be playing a bigger game more so than we did, 10, 20 seasons ago.
Yeah, and I think it's so good because the majority of the time, once you get to final tribal council, it's usually not the heaviest, like the heavy hitters or the people who made the biggest moves. It's just not, because those people a lot of times are voted out. You obviously have the couple seasons where it's like this dude just played a master, or this girl just played a masterful game. But when you see that happen, like if a Kim Spradlin came into the season now and did what she did back in season, what was it, 24? Like, even if she didn't make a single massive move, she would still win, I think. Like, but when it's a group that nobody has like a huge claim, like when it was Cassidy, Gabler, and whoever was that third person one. Was that Owen? Was he that season?
Owen, yes, Owen.
When it was those three, it's like, okay, these three were all there and were a part of a lot of things, but did they actually do anything? They weren't running the show the whole time. So they needed to find a big move to identify why they deserved it. I like that. I like it as, like, if there's nothing else, you have this big move that you can hang your hat on.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Although, again, that's the season I disagree with the most with as far as the jury decision, so there's that.
Oh yeah, because I think Cassidy wasn't given enough credit for the small moves that she made, and it was just focused, and I don't think Gabler made any big moves, but we don't need to read.
No, I mean that was just a bitter jury. That's all it was. It was people
They just didn't like
upset
her for some reason.
Right, people upset that they got voted out or lost a fire or whatever it was. Okay, so last week's vote. We had some discussion because initially it seemed like a split vote, but then we questioned it based on Hunter's exit interviews. He felt like that people were just on different pages. Turns out most people were on the same page except for Liz, according to her. She was the only one not included in a split vote, and the response was that they just knew she was voting for Q. It happened last minute, so like it's fine. But very bothered by this. I was fascinated by that because that just makes even less sense to me that everyone knew about it except for her. Like, was that intentional, or was it really just like we didn't get to talk to her in time?
It was like when you watch the episode, it was really rushed at the end where he started telling people he had an idol, and then they were walking around like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. So it doesn't surprise me that it's super last minute. I also think, yeah, if you know that you have Liz's vote, just don't bother her with it. Like, whatever, it's fine. Like, I wouldn't have felt like it was a need to tell her, because it's like, you're gonna vote the way that we want you to anyways. Yeah, you want to be in on it, but I think it's fine.
I also wonder if they underestimated her response to it. If maybe they hadn't seen this side to her, where it's like, oh, she'll be okay, opposed to like, I don't know, we've seen enough of Venus. Maybe we want to make sure she feels a part of this so she doesn't freak out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and I don't know. It's still I still have a lot of questions that I'm sure will be answered postseason of like how that all worked. But yeah, it was a planned split vote, just without Liz involved, which that did answer our question, because in the revote we noted that Liz was the only one that continued to vote for Q. Is that correct? I want to double check that. Yes, it is. So she was the only one that didn't switch her vote to Hunter on the revote. So that answers that question, because I think that was another factor. We're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But now it does, because no one told her who the revote was for.
Yeah, and that's a tough position to be in. But boy, did it just that, and suddenly she's like, so this entire episode she seems so unhinged, and that's not a great spot to be in. What do you think of them giving her rice essentially for the immunity challenge? I feel like they felt bad, and they're like, we should give her some additional food because she can't eat this stuff on the island.
No, I mean, that was 100% just like medical coming in and being like, hey guys, like this is actually starting to be a concern. Like, we don't want to get in trouble. How about we? Yeah, I don't think I fully understood. So he basically switched it up. He was like, okay, we're not gonna get 4 people, but if one person sits out, they get this rice. Or like if Kenzie
anybody who sat out yeah, maybe if just one person, they can get this individual. So Kenzie could, at least that makes sense to me, that Kenzie could have stayed out and made it so nobody got rice at that point.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure like, if they would have split it, but that makes sense why Kenzie got back then. Yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. I feel like the food is sometimes a major focus on these seasons, but other times it's not. So it's hard to know, like, does food actually affect the game this much? Like, because it's not really talked about until it is, if that makes sense. Where I feel like
Mhm.
older seasons it was constantly talked about, or like we saw a lot more camp life of them cooking and stuff. Where it's like I forget that they technically have less food than they did 10 seasons ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just the difference in gameplay. It has to be because the gameplay is just so much more now that we just don't see many of those like just cooking things. Or I think we see less people who are like a problem when it comes to cooking. Because back in the day, it was like, man, I hate the way this person does this, or like they did this while we were cooking food and they made me do this and they were barking orders at me. Now
Yeah.
everybody comes in and it's just like even keeled, tries to go with the flow, tries to not rock the boat too much, and so there's nothing to show maybe. And
Yeah,
just normal camp life.
that must be it. We should probably talk about Tiffany, Tribal Council.
We should. You just want to mention that?
Well, I think we have to talk about that. You did a great job drafting the first 4 jurors. I don't know how you did that.
Wasn't that the goal?
It wasn't, but if it was, that's very, like, some might say harder, harder than to predict the winners. But,
That's what I
I
was
don't
trying
know.
to do. Honestly, that's genuinely what I was trying to
But
do.
somehow the back-to-back Soda, Tevin, Hunter, Tiffany, and then I don't know. Jem went home like first, right? Jem wasn't even in this season.
You bullied me into
Jem-
picking Gem.
No, I made you be a man of your word.
You bullied me. Yeah, that's what I said.
You can't predict a winner and then not draft her. That's an insane move.
I didn't predict a winner. I said there's something there, and let me tell you, there was something there.
No, there wasn't. I think we can
There was
officially
a
say
game player there. That's what was there. There was something there.
she got so much airtime because of her whole leading them on a wild goose chase and idle in pocket. I think we
That's
know
good
that now.
TV to me. I don't know. That's just what that is.
Well, if we're drafting great TV, I think we both lost because I'm sitting here with Charlie and Maria, who are arguably the most boring of the people left. But that's fine. I'll keep them. Yeah.
Did
So I
either
still
of us
got.
take anyone from Yanu?
You took Tiffany. That
I
was
took
it.
Tiffany. That's literally
Yeah.
it. Yeah. 'Cause I think we were
No,
just so scared that they were just gonna get killed.
Yeah. No. I mean, that was when they lost. 3 weeks in a row. So I was like, I'm not taking
Mhm.
that chance. No. So I am sitting here with Charlie, Venus, and Maria. So I did win officially, but I'll keep us updated every week just to be sure.
Weird.
know,
You
we
do
don't
that in
wanna-
the seasons that you win, but the seasons that I win, you just don't talk about it.
That's
Interesting.
not true. I did it last season too because
No, I'm just saying it's interesting. I
my
wasn't saying
draft
anything
pick.
bad.
My draft pick went farther than all of yours with Katura. I didn't win the average, but I
Yeah,
won that.
I dominated last season.
I don't know about that. I'm just saying we did bring it up every week because it was relevant. If Katura would have won, I don't know if I would have won. I don't know if I had a chance, but I was still fighting up until the final weeks. That's for sure.
Sure. Likely story.
Okay, well Tiffany, let's give her a little bit of time. Yeah, not playing the idol, not a good move. I don't know what's there to say about it. Just blindside. Like how'd she not think this was an option? Like it felt very foolish of her to not consider this.
When everybody in tribal is talking about like, yeah, we're all on the same page and everybody wants to do this, it feels like they're trying to like just play her idol. And she said it last week. She wants to just get rid of it. She wouldn't be a threat if she didn't have it. Like they wouldn't be so worried about her if she didn't have it. They just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so why do you continue to hold on to it? I think it's partially because the people who she's closest to and who she really trusts wanted her out and were hoping that she would get out. And so she didn't have anybody that was like telling her, hey, people are worried about this.
Yes. No, 100%, because I think Kenzie probably was her only person. Like she really didn't have anyone else. Because I am curious because like we've seen Kenzie kind of have relationships with other people, like I think Ben specifically, but also talking with Maria and Charlie. It feels like Tiffany just never had that. Like when in hindsight now, looking back, it's like she really didn't talk in with a lot of people outside of like, okay, this is what the group's doing, cool. And so I do think there was probably some missed opportunities there where she didn't really have these outside connections other than Kenzie and Q up until the point that, he blew it up.
Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't really considered it until now. That's interesting. She just, yeah, didn't. I don't know if she didn't feel a need or what was going on there, but
Hmm.
hey, she
Do
she
you
made her decision.
like? Has she ever talked to Liz? I can't picture her talking to Liz.
I can't either. She has to have.
She has to have, but I just don't remember.
No, me
That's like
either.
a. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else here? I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Good season.
I'm having fun.
I'm having a lot of fun.
Yes.
We don't need to dive into it, but it was announced this week, Survivor 50, returning season.
Yeah, we'll have to do a podcast where we talk about a Dreamcast.
I think that's the case. I
And
thought about bringing it up
I'm not talking
this.
about the Sega Dreamcast. Sorry.
Okay.
Just
That's a good
I
one.
have one, and so I just wanted to mention it.
Do you actually?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Might
that's
bust it out,
old.
play some Crazy Taxi this evening. You don't
I-
know.
Yeah, no, I thought about speculating on this episode. I'm like, that's gonna take an hour. That's gonna take a full episode of us just listing
Mhm.
out who we want back. So we'll do that for a future date because this is very fresh, and we still have another 3 seasons before we even get there. So who knows?
If you so just a quick touch on that, just to see how you're feeling.
Yeah.
If you had to pick 3 absolute locks from the new era to get a call immediately for this, who are you picking?
I would pick Q,
Yeah.
100%. I would pick Shan,
Okay.
and I would probably pick Carolyn.
Okay. Carolyn was my number 1. 1-1. Easy. She's getting a call.
Yeah.
Q's probably up there at this point. I don't know about Shan.
Shan's it's been a while. I think that's the biggest downside is she's not. I
Yeah.
think it was like if it was a season or 2 after that one, I
Mhm.
think but I think people forget that she was a mastermind that kind of got ahead of herself, but
She went on some wild Twitter tirades during the Challenge USA that I don't know if she would be.
that's fair.
That's the question mark, I think, for her from me.
Well, we're talking
think-
dream scenario, right? Like who
Yeah.
who I
Okay.
want.
Okay. But yeah, those 2, and then I feel like Jesse. I feel like maybe people don't love Jesse as much as I love Jesse. I might just be clouded by how much I enjoyed him, but he was, I think, one of the, if not the best player of this era.
Yeah, I've never
I'd
been
put
on
him in
that
that
hype train.
conversation at least. Obviously, he hasn't won. Obviously, he didn't win, but yeah, he was as close as you can get, I think.
Here's my thing, because I saw Jesse's name being thrown out this week, and I've never been on that train. I don't know what it is. I feel like I want to see players because I think the best returning seasons are the ones where we get to see a different side of a player, or maybe
Mhm.
like a player that didn't get their full potential. I think the worst seasons are the ones where it's like we get JT back and he's a bust, right? Like
Mhm.
like that. We get Tony's second time in Game Changers. Like, well, this was a waste. But I think the best returning seasons are the ones like second chances, or ones where like players went home too early or maybe didn't get to unlock their full potential, and we get to see them actually get that second chance. So because I was like, I don't know if I would want a lot of winners, because to me a winner's already done the job. What more can they provide for us? And so I think, like, honestly, like if I'm even thinking of that season, I think I would want to see Cody over Jesse, because I think to me that's someone who's
I
like,
thought about Cody.
he has more to prove, where it's like Jesse lost to Fire, so it's like, would he be able to add on to his game, or would he just be there and be like, okay, cool, here's Jesse, he's good, we know his moves, we've seen them already.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mhm.
like that's the thing that could make the season better, is if we see players who have this unrealized gameplay.
That's fair. I still love Jesse.
I know you do. That wasn't just to talk him down. That's
No,
just
I know.
been
And I
that's
think
been my
that's fair.
line of thinking when I'm because I
Yeah.
got 20 players. Okay, we could list them off now, but we're not going to. But I got them.
And I know we have to go. It's interesting because Survivor, I would agree with you in a lot of ways. Like, very few times when a winner comes back is it anything that great. But Big Brother is super different, where there's so many winners that I want to see go at it again. Like that,
Mhm.
some of the people I want to see play again the most are winners, and so it's just an interesting difference in games for some reason.
Yeah, I would say like if I think there is a pattern. If you look back at the returning like players that have played more than once, I think if they have a successful return, it's because their first round wasn't great. And if they have a not great return, chances are their first one was kind of peak. I think there are exceptions, like obviously Sandra won her second time, but like her third time was not great. And I think Tony lost his second time, but then I think Winners at War was almost a response to that one, where it's like he had unrealized potential and then fulfilled it. I think like Boston Rob, right? First season, not really like all-star, but then All-Stars, he actually like makes a name for himself and then messes it up on Heroes versus Villains. So it's very fascinating how that kind of works out.
My argument was going to be Parvati, but she became once, then won, and realized that. And I would argue her game in Heroes versus Villains is better than her game in Micronesia. That's just my stance. And so like
Yeah.
she even improved even more from it, which is crazy. But anyways, you got to get out of here. Where can we find the podcast, Nathan?
Oh, you can find it at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere listen to podcasts. Really, we are on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube at NGAB Pod. That is at NGAP Pod. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Hi, Tony. Bye, Tony. We'll see you next week.
12 seasons. Oh, I'm killing it. 12 seasons. 2 pals.
We got
12
one podcasts.
Podcast. 1 season podcast.